Hey, this is Leif Ganford. I played the cash register thief in The Amazing Spider-Man, and you're listening to the Everything Geek podcast.
Hey, this is Rich McDonald, and I play Commander David Mason on Call of Duty Black Ops 2. And you're listening to Everything Geek podcast.
Hello, I'm Simon Fisherbecker. You probably know me better as Dorian Moldovar from Doctor Who, or the Fat Friar from Harry Potter. And this is Everything Geek Podcast.
Your attention, masters, mistresses. All systems functional for the Everything Geek Podcast.
Hey, it's James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Master Plo Koon in Star Wars The Clone Wars, and you're listening to Everything Geek, the podcast.
Face it, Tiger. You just hit the jackpot with the Everything Geek podcast.
Hello everyone, you're listening to the Everything Geek podcast. I'm your host Rory, and joining me is co-host Maureen. And also joining us today is a very special guest. We have actor Arben Bajraktaraj, who is best known for playing Antonin Dolohov in the Harry Potter films Order of the Phoenix and Deathly Hallows Part 1, as well as Marko in Taken. So how are you today, Arben?
Hello, I'm fine, thank you. I'm very glad to be with you.
It's a pleasure to have you join us on the podcast today. So getting right into the questions, Arben, my first question for you is, how did you decide you wanted to become an actor?
Oh, it was, as usual, around when I was 20, I went to a theater school. By that time, I was living in a country, Slovenia, and I went to a theater school, and my professor, Minu Kudro, I will never forget her, because she helped me a lot, and she gave me that, let's say, that love for acting and for theater at the beginning, and then afterwards I went to Paris and I worked with Robert Cordier, a great professor too in acting international. It was 90s and it was a hard time in my country because I come from Kosovo, as you know, and by that time it was a war time. So in a way, yes, theater was a kind of a escape for me.
It's very interesting because for me as well, you know, the podcast is kind of an escape, or it was a year or two ago, like, not because of something like a war going on, but like just from, you know, other things I do, like politics and all. So yeah, it's very interesting, very interesting. Thank you for that. So my second question is, how did you get cast as Antonin Dolohov in the Harry Potter films?
Well, before that, I worked with David Yates in a TV drama called Sex Traffic. That, if I'm not wrong, it was in 2004 or 2003, and I had a really great experience working with David Yates in that. The TV drama won 8 BAFTAs, if I'm not wrong, and was very warmly welcomed by the audience in Europe and elsewhere. And the last day I was working with David, he came to me and said to me, listen, we're going to work again together. well, I said thank you and all that, thinking that, directors sometimes say those kind of things and they do promises. But I was very surprised that 2 years later I had a call phone from London saying that David Yates wanted me to play in Harry Potter, and I was really surprised and happy to work with David again. And it's for me, he's one of the best directors I had the opportunity and the chance to work with. So basically, it was due to the previous work we did together.
That's very interesting. Thank you for that. So, moving on to my fourth question, can you talk about the filming process of the iconic electrocution scene with your character Marko in Taken?
Yes, well, that scene was very particular because actually what happened before just starting to work was something really nice, let's say, from Liam Neeson, that he helped me to be truthfully into the situation by accepting to spit truly on him. He said, "Oh, come on, man, spit on me, it's fine." So we, in a way, we did the scene all the time continuously, not cutting it. And this brought us to find, let's say, another energy, an energy of, yes, we were tired, I was tired, and this tiredness helped me to go farther in the scene. And as we were continuously doing it again and again in different angles, something came out. And surprisingly, by the end of the scene, when we finished it, the crew just was, there was applause. They were happy that we finished the scene and that something apparently happened. And the sound engineer came to me and told me that he was hearing my heartbeats going faster and faster. It was just very nice to work with Liam Neeson and for me, what was the most important thing is to do a character that is not precisely what people would expect. And even me, it's not precisely what I would expect. I didn't know how I'm going to react. The reactions came just because we were trying to be completely and truthfully in the situation. And it is a torture scene, and tortures are very violent.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it must have been a very difficult fight scene to do for that very reason, making the torture scene real. So it's no wonder you got applause at the end of it. Yeah. It did look very real in the film, that's for sure. And you were saying about you and Liam, he said you should spit on him, did you?
Well, of course, we did that because we didn't want to, it's in French they use a word to say tricher. It means when you do something, when you apparently do something, it was not the point. The point was to do really truthfully. You know what I mean? And not by fighting each other. Of course, we never try to hurt each other, but to be very precise. And yes, I must say, I don't know, to find the truth of the situation. Not only the characters, but the situations. Because actors, we are not only us, it's also the situation, it's also the story. And we must carry, first of all, this thing. First of all, the story. First of all, the situation. And the characters. If they carry that, they are pretty close to be themselves truthful too. Well, it's a little bit, tiny little bit, a different approach that let's say, never movie.
That's a really good answer, thank you. So moving on to my next question. Most actually say that playing a bad guy is a lot more fun than playing the good guy. You played a number of bad guys in your career. Would you agree that playing the bad guys is more enjoyable for you as an actor?
Well, I would like to say just first that when I face a character, first of all, I don't judge him. So I don't know if he's a bad character or he's a good guy. He's a character. And so I don't think that it really matters that a bad character can be more powerful and a good character is less powerful. I would say that every character can be powerful, every character can be fragile and weak. It's also very, very important to accept the weakness of the character and the weakness of the actor too. This is something that I really like to work in, and I had the chance also. Well, you know me more for the characters. They were bad characters, but I was lucky to also have lead parts in some movies here in Europe, and where characters were what they were. So they were not particularly bad characters, but they were not very good neither. Some of them, they were victims. I played in several movies treating the Second World War dramas. I don't know, I played a Jewish father or a gypsy victim of Holocaust. And also, what was for me very important to play was in my country, in Kosovo, when I played Kosovo Liberation Army fighter and his post-war déchéance, when he's little by little falling down and losing everything. So, yes, of course, there is let's say, in the dark part of the humanity, there is something that appears to be powerful, but also in the brighter side of the humanity, that same level of power exists. So, well, I talked a lot about it, but for me, the most important thing is not to judge the character.
That's a really good answer. And talking about your roles in films outside of Harry Potter and Taken actually leads into our next question a little bit. As an actor, you have starred in numerous French films, but in international films, you've mostly had smaller roles. Is bigger roles in international films something you're hoping to pursue at some point? Are you happier with mainly starring in French films?
Well, you know, as for me, I'm quite happy with I mean, I was quite lucky to have the opportunity to work in several really interesting movies, like here in Europe. That well, some of them they had many prizes and etc. etc. And but also I like I liked and enjoyed to work in movies that had a big international career, like taking Harry Potter. But now I keep working here in France, but also in Albania, Kosovo, Macedonia, etc. And I also work quite a lot in theater, actually. I work also with a New York-based company called Global Arts Corporation, with an American director that I really love the way he works, Michael Lesac. And we work in a very interesting projects about the transgenerational memory in conflict and post-conflict zones. Right now we are working, before they worked in South Africa and Northern Ireland. Now we are working in Cambodia in a very touching project with what happened during the Pol Pot regime there. So yes, I mean, I will see what the future is, what kind of projects will be offered to me or not. But I'm mostly working in even here in international projects, and I mean European, and some of them in the future I hope also American projects and movies.
I think it's great that you're getting to work in movies that are in several different countries. You were mentioning that. It's pretty exciting, that's for sure. It must mean you get to travel a lot, isn't it?
Well, you know, for me, the most important thing basically happened when I played for the first time in my mother tongue, in Albanian. Because, you know, acting is also linked to the language. It's also linked, because a language doesn't mean only a language. A language has also its physicality. And for me, when the first time, because as I had to leave my country very young, I worked most of the time in foreign languages. But when first time I had the opportunity to play in a movie in my own language, it just changed my way of acting, my way of being, my way, even physically. So let's say I rediscovered myself. And so yes, for me now, I feel more comfortable with my own space, and so I'm very happy to work. Yes, a little bit all around the world. I'm quite lucky with that. So let's see what will happen in the future.
Definitely, that's really great. So, my final question for you, Arben, is: do you have any upcoming acting roles or any other projects you would like to talk about?
Oh well, there are some, but we always wait till they are finished. Well, right now, this year, I worked a little bit here in France. So we did a movie which is called Money, which very talented Georgian director called Gela Bablimani, and I just finished a play called La Tonta here in one of the French national scenes. So well, I have an agent now in New York, so we will see what will happen. So
It's really great. Thank you for answering all of my questions. I'll let my co-host Maureen ask hers now.
First question for you is, how did you react when you found out your character in Harry Potter was responsible for the death of a much-loved character throughout the series?
Well, I was surprised. I was surprised. Well, it's only a character. I was actually a little bit sad that it was him, that it was Dolohov who would do it. But in a way, it's also, well, interesting. I don't know. It's not, so it's a what we call, it's a parameter that is, it's not something that, as I said before, I cannot judge the character. It depends on the situation. As he was put into this situation to do that, then, well, it's a part of his life.
That's really interesting. It's an interesting way of looking at it. I probably would have cried.
Well, it depends on. Yeah, we cannot cry every time with everything. Otherwise, we would stop working. We'd stop doing this job.
So, my second question for you is, how do you prepare for each role you get?
Well, for me, the first thing would be the physical research. For me, it's the most important, and afterwards, because I do not work in a way that, let's say, I'm not Stanislavskian, I would say in French. I believe much more in what Artaud and especially what Artaud wrote and thought about acting. So, first of all, I try to physically to prepare my body to accept that character, and then to enter into it. The mind comes later. Even sometimes it's good not to have it, because if we think too much for the part, sometimes it blocks us. And we are going to do all the time the same thing and the same thing. What is interesting to do every time a different thing, but close to the previous one. I don't know if I'm clear, enough clear about it, but it's kind of because the emotional level, the physical and emotional level, they are linked to each other. When the physicality is found, the emotion will come. We don't have to, I do not try to push it. I try just to accept it. Once I accept it, it will arise. There is going to be a rise of it. Because, and that's why I was saying that if the mind is too much present, it's going to block several channels of several emotional channels. So, yeah, it's quite graphically, actually. It's quite, acting is amazing, but also it can be a suffer, and it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be a suffer. Well, so yes, but the most important thing for me at the beginning is trying to find the very, I would say, how the not only physicality, but how the liquid goes into the physicality. It means like human being's body, the flow, how the blood goes through our body. That's the same thing with the character. We have to find how the flow, how the blood goes through him, and once we get close to it, then it's easier.
That's very interesting. I definitely agree with getting the physicality down as one of the first things, because that helps, I think, with everything else. If you can walk as them, you can talk as them, you can be them.
The thing is, we personally, I do not try to be them. I try to put my body into a position that it will be accepted, like to be them. Because the problem is that if I try to be them, I'm not going to be them. It's a little bit perhaps complicated what I'm trying to say, but the thing is that it's when you open your body, you're going to accept things and even discover things in yourself that you didn't know. And if this goes with the character you're working on, then it's perfect. Then happens something that it happens very rare, but rarely, when we do things where our body does things, uncontrolled things, that are right with the situation, with the character, that we were not expecting at all. So, well, because what I was trying to explain also, that even though we are creating characters, we are always ourselves. We are not going to go out of ourselves completely. It's impossible. We are playing characters. That's an evidence. But it's still ourselves. So we have to accept that duality. Even Diderot, in 18th century, wrote a very, very, very nice, very great story about it. It's called The Paradox of the Actor, and he was right about that. But it's unbelievable that an actor sometimes can go even farther than a character in a true life would go. So it's kind of weird, but it's true. Sometimes when we are playing, when we are existing into scenes, we are able to do things that even ourselves we didn't know that we were able to go so far into, sometimes into emotional violence, and sometimes, but it must be controlled, and we were even in let's say physical, yeah. I don't know if I was enough clear about it. But
yeah, it was really, really interesting, because you always hear of loads of different methods, and a lot of people kind of tend to emphasize the being of the character, and it's kind of refreshing to kind of see that that's not the way it has to be, that you can still portray a character very well without having to become the person, by still being yourself. So
it was a big question that several, a lot of, let's say, actors, coaches were posing, and well, when I was young, everybody, we had that, let's say, Eastern European acting school, based on, by that time was of course Stanislavski, but not only, because afterwards there were many other masters, and that's why personally I was surprised sometimes, especially when you are facing characters that are not, especially when you are facing characters that are playing, that are facing, let's say, magical situations. When you're facing a situation that is beyond reality, you cannot rely on only psychological elements. If you rely only that, then it's going to be a little bit, let's say, dry. You have to find something else that is linked with your past, with the past of your ancestors, and yes, not being afraid of going into spirituality. And yes, it's complicated, but very nice, because it's another way of working, and the flow of energy is, believe me, completely different.
Well, thanks very much. That was a really good answer. So my other question is, who would you consider the actors who have influenced you in your own career?
There were so many great actors. Personally, I'm still, every time I see one of the Italian neorealism movies, and I love actors that were playing with Pasolini, Visconti, and of course Fellini too. Of course, I love Mastroianni, but for me, there is an actor that you might not know him, but he's an Albanian actor who played a lot in Yugoslav movies, but he also played with John Huston in the 60s. This actor, his name was Bekim Femiu, and I was really impressed by his way of acting. And there are also some actors that I really love, in like Michel Piccoli. I really admire him, and many others. Bruno Gans, I really also love his work. But I was also happy, and so happy to work with great actors that I admired before and I still admire, like Gary Oldman, Peter Mullen, Liam Neeson too, and also Depardieu, and other actors that you might not know, but who are great actors for me, who come from Balkan countries, or here other European countries. But yeah, so what I admire with these actors is that there is something beyond acting. They carry something, what I just expressed before. They carry their past, but not only their past. They carry also something from another time. And this is something fascinating.
Well, that's incredibly interesting. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for answering all my questions.
So that's all of our questions for you today, Arben. It's been a pleasure talking to you on the podcast.
It was a great pleasure to talk to you, Ruari. I wish you the best, and
thank you.
Really, it was really great to have the opportunity to and the chance to be with you.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much. So hopefully we can talk to you again at some point.
With pleasure. Always with pleasure.
Great. We'll talk to you again soon then. Bye, and thanks again for joining us.
Bye. Thank you.
So make sure to check out our YouTube channels. The podcast is www.youtube.com/user/everythinggeekcast. Mine is www.youtube.com/user/Separatist Maureen's is www.youtube.com/user/Lizzie11. Check out our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/everythinggeekpodcast. Check us out on Twitter, twitter.com/everythinggeekp. Check us out on Instagram, instagram.com/official-everythinggeekpodcast. Check out our Mixcloud profile, www.mixcloud.com/everythinggeekpodcast. Email us at the below email, everythinggeekpodcast@gmail.com. Check out Arben Bajraktaraj's website, www.arbenbajraktaraj.net. Check out our companion podcast, Everything Geek Comic Cast, www.facebook.com/everythinggeekcomiccast, and check out Channel 138 where we broadcast live from, www.channel138.com. So geeks out, everyone.